You say you want to get rich, but your behavior is still protecting the man who stays poor. You still ask people who never built wealth whether your plan makes sense. You still sacrifice your best hours for comfort. You still need to feel understood before you make dangerous decisions. And then you wonder why another year passes without changing your position. Your problem is not that you lack information. Your problem is that the old version of you still has authority. Until that man loses power, every new opportunity will be filtered through the same fear, the same habits, and the same need for permission. You do not need another dream. You need a succession of power. Because here is the question most ambitious men never ask. What if the thing keeping you poor is not outside you? What if it is the identity that decides which opportunities feel safe, which risks feel unacceptable, how much rejection you can tolerate, how visible you are willing to become, and how quickly you retreat when people stop approving? Modern psychology calls part of this identity-based motivation. Psychologist Daphne Oyserman's work points to a brutal mechanism. People tend to choose actions that feel consistent with who they believe they are. When an action feels aligned with identity, difficulty can feel meaningful. When it feels incompatible with identity, that same difficulty can feel like proof that the path is not for people like you. That means two men can see the same opportunity and experience two different worlds. One man sees uncertainty and thinks, learn, test, adapt. Another man sees uncertainty and thinks, this is not who I am, go back. The opportunity did not change. The identity interpreting it did. And Machiavelli understood something similar about power centuries before modern psychology gave it a name. Everyone sees what you appear to be. The world cannot reward the potential hidden inside your head. It can only react to what your behavior makes visible. This is where wealth becomes psychological before it becomes financial. Not because money appears from positive thinking, not because identity magically creates income, but because identity governs the actions you are willing to repeat long enough for skill, proof, reputation, leverage, and money to compound. Consider Jeff Bezos in 1994. He was not unemployed. He was not desperate. He had a strong position at D.E. Shaw in New York. When Bezos told his boss he wanted to leave and build an online bookstore, his boss walked with him through Central Park and told him the idea sounded good, but would make more sense for someone who did not already have a good job. That was the pressure. Security on one side, an uncertain future on the other. Bezos later described thinking about the choice through the regret he might feel at 80 if he never tried. He left. The empire did not exist yet. The applause did not exist yet. The proof did not exist yet. The action came first. By the end of 1997, Amazon reported more than 1.5 million customer accounts and $147.8 million in annual sales, up 838% from the prior year. Pressure, choice, action, evidence. That sequence matters. Bezos did not become Jeff Bezos because he stood in front of a mirror and repeated that he was an entrepreneur. He made a choice that forced his identity to catch up with his behavior. Now look at your own life. How much money have you lost because you needed certainty? How many years because you needed approval? How many opportunities because you did not want to look inexperienced? How many negotiations did you avoid because you feared tension? How many projects remained private because being judged frightened you more than remaining invisible? A man can call himself ambitious while arranging his entire life around the avoidance of embarrassment. That is not ambition. That is fear wearing expensive language. And the longer you protect that identity, the more expensive it becomes. First you lose time, then confidence, then opportunities, then bargaining power. Eventually, you begin calling your limitations personality. You say, I am just not the kind of person who sells. I am just not the kind of person who posts. I am just not the kind of person who negotiates. I am just not the kind of person who takes big risks. No, you are the kind of person whose old identity has been allowed to keep command. Law 1. Your income often obeys your identity before it obeys your ambition. You say, I want financial freedom. But the old identity says, I need security. You say, I want to build something. The old identity asks, what if people see me fail? You say, I want to get rich. The old identity whispers, people like us do not do things like that. This is why motivation alone repeatedly fails. Your ambition can change in 5 minutes. Identity has years of evidence behind it. Your old identity remembers every time you quit, every time you avoided selling, every time you chose entertainment over skill, every time you asked for permission, every time you promised yourself Monday would be different. Your habits are not random. Many of them are bodyguards protecting an identity. A recent systematic review and meta-analysis involving 13,340 participants found a strong positive relationship between habit and identity in health behavior, while also noting that the relationship may operate in both directions. The domain is health behavior, not wealth, but the principle matters. Repeated behavior and identity can reinforce each other. You repeatedly act like a certain man. Then you use those actions as evidence that this is simply who you are. Then that identity makes the next similar action easier. The loop closes. A man who avoids rejection becomes better at avoidance. A man who hides his work becomes better at invisibility. A man who waits for approval becomes better at waiting. Then he looks at his bank account and pretends the problem is the economy, the algorithm, his family, his friends, his boss, his country, or bad timing. Sometimes those things are real, but they are not the whole truth. The colder truth is this: if your identity is built around safety, belonging, and emotional protection, it will sabotage the actions that create wealth, because wealth often requires exposure, judgment, negotiation, risk, visibility, and temporary status loss. A man cannot become economically dangerous while staying psychologically harmless. Law 2. Every old identity has a survival system. Do not underestimate your old self. He was built for a reason. Maybe he learned to keep his head down. Maybe he learned not to attract attention. Maybe he learned not to challenge authority. Maybe he learned not to embarrass the family. Maybe he learned to take the stable paycheck, never ask for too much money, never sell himself, never risk looking foolish, remain useful, and remain understandable. Those rules may have protected belonging. They may have kept conflict low. They may have helped you survive an environment where experimentation was punished. Maybe in your family, risk was called stupidity. Maybe ambition was called arrogance. Maybe money was treated as something only other people knew how to build. Maybe the safest man was the quiet man, the useful man, the man who did not disturb the room. But survival systems do not automatically become wealth systems. A strategy that kept you safe at 20 can keep you trapped at 35. And this is where many men lie to themselves. They say, I am being responsible. But often, responsibility is just fear with better manners. They say, I am waiting for the right time. But often, timing is just approval wearing a calendar. They say, I do not want to make a mistake. But often, caution is just the old identity protecting its throne. Machiavelli wrote about the danger of introducing a new order. People who benefit from the old arrangement resist change, while supporters of the new arrangement often remain uncertain until they see proof. The same political struggle can happen inside one man. The old order has evidence. The new order has promises. The old order can say, "This is how we survived." The new order can only say, "This is what we might become." Guess which one wins unless you act. The old self is not defeated by inspiration. He is defeated by evidence. He does not surrender because you feel motivated at midnight. He surrenders when your repeated behavior proves that his rules no longer predict your future. Law 3. Approval has a financial price. John Paul DeJoria understood rejection long before he became a billionaire. He had been homeless twice. He sold products door to door. When he and Paul Mitchell started John Paul Mitchell Systems in 1980, they reportedly put together just $700. DeJoria was again without stable housing and went door to door selling shampoo. His pressure was not theoretical. It was not a motivational quote. It was rejection with real financial consequences. He did not have the luxury of needing everyone to understand him. He needed customers. He needed sales. He needed movement. His action was simple. Keep knocking. He later told Forbes that a salesman must be able to face rejection at door 100 with the same enthusiasm as door 1. The first proof was not billions, it was customers, sales, survival. A business that continued moving. The company eventually became a $1 billion a year business, and DeJoria became a billionaire. The power lesson is not become John Paul DeJoria. The lesson is this. Rejection stops controlling a man when action becomes more important than approval. And this is where many ambitious men stay poor. They do not launch because somebody may laugh. They do not negotiate because somebody may dislike them. They do not sell because no feels personal. They do not publish because being ignored feels humiliating. They do not specialize because their friends may not understand. They remain economically obedient because they are psychologically dependent. Machiavelli's language was political, not financial, but the underlying warning about dependence is useful. It is much safer to be feared than loved. Do not turn that into childish intimidation. Apply the deeper principle. If your survival depends entirely on being liked, you have surrendered leverage. A client who knows you cannot afford to lose him controls the negotiation. An employer who knows you have no alternatives controls your tolerance. A social circle whose approval determines your decisions controls your ambition. A family whose fear becomes your command controls your ceiling. Dependence is expensive. Not only emotional dependence, financial dependence, social dependence, identity dependence. The kind of dependence where you cannot move until someone else makes your ambition feel acceptable. And the terrifying part is that you can hide this dependency behind intelligent language. You can call it patience, you can call it strategy, you can call it humility, you can call it being realistic. But if every important move in your life waits for emotional permission from people who will not carry the cost of your obedience, you are not being strategic. You are being governed. If you are the right viewer, stop false progress. You already know that consuming more videos will not save a man who keeps avoiding the same uncomfortable action. The real problem is not that you lack ambition. It is that your ambition has no system strong enough to survive rejection, fatigue, doubt, and invisibility. Inside Patreon, I go deeper into the private frameworks behind proof, positioning, discipline, funnels, leverage, and self-command. It is not for men looking for comfort. It is for men ready to turn their private ambition into visible evidence. The decision is yours. Law 4. Stop confusing. Being underestimated with being unproven. This law will offend your pride. Good, you may tell yourself, they do not see my potential. Maybe they do not. But ask the colder question. What evidence should force them to? There is a difference between being underestimated and being unproven. If you have produced measurable results and people dismiss them, you may be underestimated. If you have strong conviction but weak evidence, you are unproven. Do not romanticize the second condition. Being misunderstood does not make you exceptional. Being ignored does not automatically mean people are threatened. Sometimes the market simply has not received enough proof. Sometimes your friends are not jealous. Sometimes your family is not blind. Sometimes the world is not conspiring against you. Sometimes you have not built enough evidence to make belief rational. That should not humiliate you. It should clarify the mission. Potential is private. Proof is political. Proof changes how people are forced to calculate your value. A man with no proof must ask to be believed. A man with proof changes the cost of disbelief. One explains, the other demonstrates. One needs people to imagine his future. The other gives them facts they must account for. And Machiavelli put the matter brutally. One judges by the result. That sentence is cold because it removes your excuses. The world does not judge the emotional intensity of your dream. It judges the visible consequence of your behavior. Your intentions may be noble. Your pain may be real. Your childhood may have been difficult. Your family may have failed to support you. Your friends may have doubted you. But none of that automatically becomes economic value. The market does not pay compensation for emotional difficulty. It pays for value that can be recognized and exchanged. Your suffering can become fuel. It cannot become your resume. This is where the unsupported man must become more dangerous than the supported man. The supported man can afford fantasy for longer. He may have a network, family money, social protection, inherited confidence, and rooms that open before he proves anything. You may not have that. That is not fair. But fairness is not the operating system of power. If you are unsupported, proof is not optional. Proof is your social capital. Proof is your introduction. Proof is your defender when you are not in the room. Proof is how strangers begin to calculate you differently. Proof is how your past loses its monopoly over how people see you. So stop demanding that people believe your intentions. Give them evidence they must account for. But that creates the next question. What kind of evidence actually kills the old identity? Law 5. The old self dies. When you stop feeding it evidence, do not stand in front of a mirror saying, "I am rich." Your nervous system does not care about slogans when your behavior keeps presenting contradictory evidence. If the old identity says, "I never finish anything," finish one project, then another. If it says, "I cannot sell," make 10 legitimate offers. If it says, "Nobody will pay me," develop one useful skill and earn the first dollar from it. If it says, "I am invisible," publish work that can be judged. If it says, "I have no discipline," keep one difficult promise to yourself every day for 30 days. You are not trying to feel powerful. You are building a case. Every completed action becomes evidence against the previous identity. Every kept promise becomes a witness. Every uncomfortable repetition becomes testimony. Every visible result becomes a political act inside your own mind. This is how authority changes hands. The old self does not lose power because you hate him. Hatred still keeps you emotionally tied to him. He loses power when you stop giving him proof that his rules are still correct. If you keep saying you are a builder but your evenings disappear into entertainment, the old identity wins. If you keep saying you want money but you avoid every action that involves selling, negotiating, asking, charging, publishing, or being judged, the old identity wins. If you keep saying you are independent, but your decisions still depend on whether your family understands, whether your friends approve, whether strangers clap, or whether the room makes you feel important, the old identity wins. Understand this clearly. Your identity is not built by what you admire, it is built by what you repeatedly prove. Many men admire discipline. Few produce disciplined evidence. Many men admire wealth. Few build wealth-compatible behavior. Many men admire power. Few can tolerate the emotional cost of becoming difficult to control. The old self does not need your opinions. He feeds on your patterns. He feeds on delay. He feeds on delay. He feeds on secrecy. He feeds on comfort. He feeds on the private fantasy that someday you will become serious without first becoming uncomfortable. So you must stop feeding him, not with drama, not with announcements, not with speeches about your new era. Quietly, measurably, repeatedly, create contradictions against the old identity until the old story becomes harder to believe. If you believe you never finish, finish something small enough to complete but meaningful enough to count. If you believe you are invisible, publish one piece of work with a measurable response. If you believe you cannot sell, make one honest offer to one real person. If you believe you are bad with money, track every dollar for 30 days and cut one expense that proves you are no longer asleep. If you believe nobody will take you seriously, build something serious enough that your own behavior stops insulting your claim. The goal is not to feel rich. The goal is to become the kind of man whose normal behavior creates leverage. Law 6. Build the proof stack. Here is the sequence. Skill to output. Output to proof. Proof to visibility. Visibility to reputation. Reputation to leverage. Leverage to money. Most men want to jump straight to money. That is why they stay weak. They want income without skill. They want recognition without proof. They want opportunity without visibility. They want bargaining power without reputation. They want freedom without leverage. But power has a structure. Skill without output remains private. Output without proof remains questionable. Proof without visibility remains economically weak. Visibility without competence eventually collapses. But competence plus proof plus distribution begins to create leverage. You become easier to trust, harder to replace, more expensive to ignore, better positioned to negotiate. Notice what is absent from that sequence. Pain. Potential. Good intentions. Hours spent thinking, the number of videos you consumed, the number of plans you wrote, the number of times you imagined your comeback. Nobody owes you wealth because you suffered. Nobody owes you respect because your family doubted you. Nobody owes you opportunity because your childhood was difficult. Nobody owes you attention because you feel unseen. This is harsh, but it is freedom. Because if the market does not pay you for pain, then you do not have to keep displaying pain as your identity. You can convert it. Pain becomes discipline. Discipline becomes skill. Skill becomes output. Output becomes proof. Proof becomes leverage. Leverage becomes money. That is the alchemy. But most men die at the first visible layer. They learn in private, think in private, dream in private, plan in private, and suffer in private. Then they wonder why the world treats them like they do not exist. Hidden value is often treated as non-existent value. This is not moral judgment. It is strategic reality. If nobody can see the skill, it cannot produce reputation. If nobody can measure the result, it cannot produce trust. If nobody can understand the value, it cannot produce demand. If nobody knows you exist, they cannot choose you, hire you, buy from you, recommend you, or compete for your attention. A man without proof is always negotiating from imagination. A man with proof negotiates from evidence. That is the difference between asking for a chance and becoming a calculation. You do not need everyone to believe in you. You need enough visible proof that the right people begin to see value, risk, scarcity, and upside when they look at you. This is why the proof stack matters. Skill is the raw weapon. Output is the weapon leaving your hand. Proof is the mark it leaves. Visibility is the battlefield seeing the mark. Reputation is the memory of repeated marks. Leverage is what happens when people know you can create value again. Money is only the economic consequence of that chain. Law 7. Replace permission with standards. The old man asks, do they approve? The new man asks, did I execute? Did I produce? Did I improve? Did I create measurable market evidence? Did I increase my options? Did I increase my bargaining power? Did I build something I own? This is the psychological transfer of authority. Not rebellion for its own sake, not refusing advice, not assuming every critic is jealous. A powerful man can listen without surrendering judgment. He takes useful intelligence from anyone, but he does not hand everyone voting rights over his future. Before allowing an opinion to redirect your life, ask 5 questions. Has this person achieved the outcome I want? Do they understand the domain? Are they offering evidence or fear? Will they bear the consequences if I obey them? Does following their advice increase or decrease my leverage? That is strategic judgment. The old identity wants emotional certainty before action. The new identity wants evidence after action. The old identity asks, will they understand me? The new identity asks, what did I build that can be understood without begging? This is where self-respect becomes practical. Self-respect is not walking around with pride while your life remains undisciplined. Self-respect is refusing to let your future be governed by people who are not responsible for the cost of your obedience. Your family may love you and still fear your ambition. Your friends may like you and still prefer the version of you that does not disturb the hierarchy. Your employer may value you and still pay you less than your contribution is worth. A client may praise you and still negotiate against your weakness. This is not personal. This is incentive. When you understand incentives, you stop acting shocked by human nature. You stop needing everyone to be noble before you move. You stop needing emotional safety before you act. You stop confusing disappointment with betrayal. You stop giving people moral authority just because they have emotional access to you. The new man does not ask for a committee vote on his destiny. He studies reality. He builds proof. He measures behavior. He improves the offer. He increases options. He becomes harder to replace. He becomes calmer because his power is no longer built on applause. If you are the right viewer, stop false progress. You already know. The real problem is not lack of advice. It is the absence of a deeper operating system for proof, positioning, discipline, funnels, leverage, and self-command. If you stay the same, you will keep mistaking motion for progress and private ambition for market value. Patreon is where I break down the deeper systems without softening the truth for casual viewers. It is not for men who want motivation. It is for men who want private frameworks, sharper standards, and proof they can build with. The decision is yours. Law 8. Make your new identity more expensive to betray. At first, discipline feels unnatural because the old identity has momentum. You are not yet the disciplined man. You are the man producing disciplined evidence. That distinction matters. Too many men try to claim the identity before paying for it. They say, I am a businessman, but they have made no offers. They say, I am a creator, but they do not publish. They say, I am serious, but their calendar shows escape. They say, I am different, but their bank account, body, habits, and reputation still testify for the old regime. Do not rush to rename yourself. Build the evidence first. At the beginning, finishing will feel strange. Selling will feel uncomfortable. Publishing will feel exposed. Charging money will feel aggressive. Negotiating will feel tense. Entering higher value rooms will feel like you do not belong. This is normal. The old identity is not proof of truth. It is proof of familiarity. Your mind will often confuse unfamiliar with dangerous. That is why the first stages of growth feel like betrayal. You are not only changing behavior, you are violating an internal government that was built to keep you acceptable, safe, and predictable. But repetition changes the cost. Do it long enough and the relationship reverses. Finishing becomes normal. Selling becomes tolerable. Publishing becomes expected. Learning becomes routine. Keeping promises becomes part of your reputation with yourself. Building output becomes less dramatic. Being judged becomes less fatal. Asking for money becomes less emotional. Creating evidence becomes your default response to insecurity. Eventually, skipping the work creates more internal friction than doing it. That is when identity has begun to change. Not because the past disappeared, but because the past lost authority. Your old self does not need your hatred. Keep the memory, keep the lessons, keep the intelligence, remove the command. You are not trying to destroy yourself. You are replacing a survival government with a system capable of building leverage. The boy who needed approval may have protected you once. The man who still needs it will cost you everything. The part of you that learned caution may have kept you from humiliation. But if caution becomes your religion, it will keep you from power. The part of you that learned to remain understandable may have preserved belonging. But if being understood matters more than building, you will become a prisoner of people who never had the map. So stop saying, "I need to become rich." That is too vague. Say this instead. I need to become the kind of man whose normal behavior repeatedly creates value, proof, options, and ownership. That identity has economic consequences. Not because identity magically creates wealth, but because identity influences the behaviors you are willing to repeat long enough for skill and leverage to compound. Your future is not asking whether you feel ready. It is watching what you repeatedly prove. Now identify one law your old self still lives by. Maybe it is, do not risk rejection. Maybe it is, do not charge more. Maybe it is, do not publish before it is perfect. Maybe it is, do not challenge the safe career. Maybe it is, do not enter rooms where you feel low status. Maybe it is, do not build something unless people understand it. Maybe it is, do not start until somebody believes in you. Choose one. Then violate it with evidence. Not recklessly, strategically. Make the sales call. Finish the product. Publish the work. Acquire the skill. Ask for the price. Save the money. Build the second option. Create one fact your old identity cannot explain. Then repeat it. Do not announce that you have changed. Do not give a speech about becoming a different man. Do not ask anyone to notice. Make the transformation measurable. Because the final stage is not when you say the old man is dead. It is when his rules no longer predict your behavior. Once that happens, another question appears. If you no longer need permission, what could you build with all the energy you used to waste seeking it? That is where power begins. That is where leverage begins. And for the unsupported man, that may be where wealth finally begins. Stop asking to be believed. Build the proof. Build the leverage. Build anyway. The old version of you has had enough years in power. Now give the future evidence.